Hello and welcome to the It's Record Time podcast. I am your host, Alex, and this is the show where each week I'm joined by a different guest to talk about their favourite albums, biggest influences, and the bands that they love. This week I was joined by the awesome Dave Cavalier. Dave is best known for being the drummer in hardcore feminist punk band War on Women, as well as being the singer and guitarist in psych rock band Black Lung. Dave and me spoke over the Thanksgiving weekend in 2020, and I'm very grateful for him giving up his time to chat to me. We talked about Baltimore making the best drummers in the world, Dave's hidden superpower, and why everyone should be listening to A Tribe Called Quest. You can check out the show notes for links to social media pages for Dave, War on Women, and Black Lung, as well as more information about how you can support local venues during coronavirus. I'm also going to quickly apologise at the top of this episode. My vocals sound a little bit echoey during points in this episode, but Dave sounds great and he has much more interesting stuff to say than me anyway, so it's all good. I'll be back at the end of the show for a bit more chat, so until then, enjoy!
As we're talking, it's Thanksgiving weekend in America. How's your Thanksgiving been? Have you been celebrating? Do you celebrate?
Normally, normally my family is the type to have a massive get together on Thanksgiving. It'll be like 30 of us, big feast. And, we invite, and it's not just direct family, we invite like anybody, like friends and like, extended family, it's a big occasion for us. So, we didn't do that, obviously, this year. We scaled back. We sat in my aunt's backyard around a fire, and I was very proud of my family. Everybody takes, the situation really seriously. Everybody was wearing masks. Everybody wears masks throughout the week and throughout their lives. And, it's not an easy thing. People have their own reality and their own truth when it comes to coronavirus, it seems, right? I mean,
yeah, increasingly so, I think.
Yeah, you just kind of never know. So yeah, I'm very happy to say that my family takes it really seriously. And we didn't do the big get together, kept it real small, kept it outside, kept it pretty much as safe as you can be, without just straight up not doing it, which like a lot of people just didn't do it, and that's good too.
It sounds really nice, actually, sitting around by a fire outside and sort of chatting away and stuff. It's obviously not ideal in the end of November, weather-wise, but...
Yeah, we got really lucky, man. It was like some decent weather, like not too chilly. And yeah, it is really nice just to, my family, I love my family, a bunch of like New York Jews, basically. So it's pretty fun hanging out and just chatting and, having a hang.
Very cool. How's your 2020 been in general?
Man, I chalk myself up lucky. I'm sitting here drinking coffee inside my home, surrounded by instruments and my lovely girlfriend. So it's like, we're cool, man. Like, obviously we've all had our big disappointments this year. Everybody didn't get to do something that they wanted to do, I imagine, right? At least one big thing. For us, for War on Women, it was going on tour with Bad Religion and Alkaline Trio. Right. That was supposed to happen in April, for basically like a month, around the US, which was going to be massive. It was probably going to be our biggest tour to date. And that was like the first thing that got canceled, Yeah,
that sounds awful. Like, has it been, do you know if it's going to be rescheduled or not? Or
I think everybody wants to reschedule. We're going to face like a pretty big wave of, everybody trying to go on tour, right? Once you are able to go on tour again, assuming that we're all getting vaccinated and whatever. So yeah, hopefully it gets rescheduled. I think if it does, we'll still be on the bill. But who knows, man? Those were going to be really big shows. Those were going to be like 4,000 or 5,000 capacity rooms. Like that's the last thing that's coming back, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think what you said about next year, everyone's going to be going out on tour and stuff. I think next year is going to be just a great year for music and film and everything. Everyone's just postponed everything this year. So we're hopefully going to get sort of double culture next year, which would be nice.
That would be nice. Yeah. I mean, it's been a great year for recording. I mean, this is the things that we're going to be talking about on this podcast are very fitting because there's been so much recorded music coming out this year. Everybody is, locked down at home and figuring out their home recording setup, and like turns out you can make it sound pretty good. And I think we'll see a wave of artists that are just like, maybe we don't have to spend $10,000-$20,000 in the studio to make a great thing. Nothing against beautiful studios. I love going to the studio, but it's pretty cool to see what people are capable of doing just at home.
Yeah, you're completely right. A lot of stuff that's sort of been coming out, I think people have been forced to get quite inventive with how they're recording at home. And yeah, I mean, hopefully, anything that opens up music to more and more people, and anything that makes it more accessible to be able to actually release an album and put something out, that's got to be, it's got to be a good news, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, we're all consuming music more than ever, Like that's the first thing I go on my Spotify every day, and chances are like there's something new on there, new release for you, new album for you, new whatever, It's like it's constant now. We're just consuming a lot of music right now.
Yeah, definitely. So I switched to home working back in March, and haven't been near my office since. So I've just had music playing, mainly Spotify playing, for about 10 hours a day just from my desk whilst I'm working. It's
Right.
been great. I found loads of great stuff this year.
Yeah.
So before we sort of get into the records that you've chosen for us to talk about today, I wanted to sort of quickly touch on you and your bands and a bit of your musical history, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, right now, I play drums in War on Women. It's a feminist hardcore punk rock and roll band, and we just put out our full length, Wonderful Hell, which I love. I think it's great. It's the first, War on Women's been a band for 10 years, and this is the first. I joined the band a little like more than a year ago, so this is the first record that I'm on.
So how did you get involved in War on Women? I was because I knew you were sort of newish to the band, and I picked up I looked through the credits on my vinyl versions of the previous album, and I was sort of looking for your name on there. So you weren't involved in that record, which came out in 2018, I think it was.
Yeah.
How did you
Capture the Flag?
Capture the Flag, yeah.
Right, yeah. So I play. You see guitars hanging in the background. I know people can't see video, but I play guitar as well, and I play guitar and sing in a band called Black Lung, which is kind of a like heavy psych rock project. And I know Brooks and Shauna really well from Big Crunch, which is their amp repair shop, which is in Baltimore, and they're the best. And Brooks makes custom amps as well. All the amps that we play on tour in War on Women are built by Brooks, which is
amazing.
Really awesome. And yeah, as far as like amp repair people, I mean, like you can't find better people than them. So I was going to them for a while anyway, just to get my stuff fixed, And then I don't even think Brooks knew that I played drums, but drums are really my first instrument. And I put up a video of me playing along to a Cardi B song. I like it like that, just kind of like shedding drum stuff over it. And Brooks hit me up. He was just like, "Hey man, would you ever think about playing in a punk band?" And I was like, I know who War on Women is, dude. Like, I had like known them forever. And I had War on Women's first vinyl for a long time, the Improvised Weapons one. And I always loved it. I always thought the band was really cool and inventive and kind of like a cut above like just your average like punk band, But that was it. He sent me that message, and I went and kind of did like an audition or whatever, and then that was it. And I played a show with them in at this little venue in Baltimore called Wind Up Space, which is maybe capacity like 200 or something like that, And then the next show was in Sydney, Australia.
Wow.
at a Download Fest opening for Slayer and Alice in Chains, and it's crazy.
Absolutely amazing. So obviously, like War on Women are a super political band. Like that message is so tied into the music, and your other band, Black Lung, aren't as sort of political, I guess. Is that fair to say?
Right. Yeah.
How is it joining like a band like War on Women, and if they've already got sort of a core fan base and they've got a really strong identity? How is it sort of becoming part of that world?
Yeah, man, it's cool. It's like, I was talking with Shauna about this the other day, actually, our singer, about being in, because I've always played in bands like, my whole life basically. And none of them have really been political. Like we all have politics, right?
Yeah.
Like, and of course, amongst ourselves, we are constantly, especially now, discussing politics, right? But at the end of the day, I've mainly been in bands with like a bunch of other white dudes, you know. Like I've never, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's not fair to say. Like I've been in bands with women, I've been in bands with people of color, but like, you know, Black Lung, for example, is like, it's three white dudes, right? It's like three straight cis men. And for us to be political, it's just a little bit like who cares, right? It's like it's good. We want to be like allies, and we want to like stand by the people who are actually being marginalized and oppressed in this world, but we don't want to be too like complainy, because like how bad do we have it really is the idea. So we find it better just to make great music and then like have our politics, right? So like to join a feminist you know, punk band, like, you know, part of that audition process was me like sitting at a table with Shauna and having like a little interview, you know, and her being like, what does feminism mean to you? You know, like, what are your politics? Like, what do you, and, you know, I wouldn't have joined the band if our politics didn't align, you know. It's an important part of being in that band. I love the fact that Shauna screams about all the things that I think about, and some of the things that I don't, you know. But my role in the band is very much, you know, I'm the drummer, man. I'm not the front man of this one. Like that's Shauna's job. I like to hang out in the back and just like support.
Like you said, it was about 4 weeks ago as we record that One Full Hell came out, and you know I think the reviews of it have been great. I played it so many times over the last few weeks. Like it's one of those albums which is firmly on like my album of the year list. How is it releasing a album in 2020? Like obviously your normal cycle on this would be put an album out and then presumably go out on tour and play these sort of songs to people. How is it releasing a record where live music has basically stopped?
Yeah, it's a strange thing, right? Like it's going to be like the opposite of what we normally do. So you're exactly right. It's like normally you put out the record and then you go on tour and then you try to, you know, push the vinyl and push like, you know, everything that goes along with it, and you know, play the songs live in front of people. Like that's the most exciting, thrilling payoff that you can get, you know, because we just spent all this time writing all these songs and like thinking about which ones will be good in the studio and which ones are really going to kill live, and you know, like all this kind of stuff, and then you just like don't get that last little piece of satisfaction. And there's going to be a weird cycle, like a lot of bands are going through this, right? It's like we just wrote like, you know, like 10 or 12 brand new songs, and then we just released them, and now by the time we can go out and actually play them, like maybe we're going to write 12 more new songs or something, you know. It's like those songs are going to be a year old at least by the time we go on tour next. So it's just kind of this funny, it's nice to read you know, it's nice to read reviews. It's nice to read that people are enjoying it. It's nice to hear, like that's kind of the only satisfaction that we're getting right now, is just people being like, I like that. I listen to it and I like it. And you're like, okay, cool. Thanks.
So you said that like you're predominantly a drummer and you were a drummer first. When did you sort of start playing, and what was the sort of motive behind that?
Yeah, I started playing snare drum in like 5th grade. So like 10 years old, probably. And then once I got into like middle school, there was a bunch of like drummers who were already really good, you know, like 13-year-olds. Like you know, Baltimore's a crazy place, man. Like Baltimore makes fantastic musicians, and in particular great drummers. Like really, really great drummers come out of Baltimore. The best drummer in the world, arguably, Dennis Chambers, is from Baltimore. Like we just make great musicians. So I was always surrounded by that, which I was really lucky for. Like the drummer community is really tight. So, but it all starts there. It all starts in like middle school, hanging out after school, kind of messing around on drum set. You know, my friends were always musicians, so we just kind of started little bands and stuff. And yeah, it all started there.
I was read somewhere that you were doing lots of jam sessions, and there was lots of jazz influences going on, and sort of blues stuff as well as that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I I was lucky enough to host a jazz jam session for a while at a place called Club 347, which was this staple in Baltimore of like, you know, just the most killer musicians would come and play jazz standards or R&B or hip hop or whatever it was, you know. And I went for like, I mean, I definitely like paid my dues, like I went for like 5 or 10 years, just like go like every single Monday, it's like church for people, right? And that's like where most of my like musician friends came from, arguably. It's just this little network of people that are, just amazing. And I learned a lot, man. I almost, I contemplated going to school for music for a while when I was, back in the college days, and I ended up going for audio production because there was so much knowledge in that room at Club 347 that it was like, I don't know what else I could possibly learn from like a professor at Berkeley. Here's a guy who like plays for Santana, right? Plays drums for Santana, and he's like giving me pointers on like how to build a solo. So like, what else do I really need besides that? Like, here's the drummer for Michelle and Degenicello. Here's the drummer for P Funk. Here's the bass player for Justin Timberlake. Here's the, it goes on and on and on. And you're just like, I could just ask these guys questions and I'll be good. Like that's all the knowledge that I need. Oh, and by the way, it was free. All I had to do was
Yeah.
like show up, be nice, and not be cocky, like just like try to be the best drummer I could be and like earn their respect.
That's incredible. So that it's just sort of putting in the hours and sort of mastering the craft almost. And presumably there wasn't much else going on in terms of like hobbies and stuff. Are you someone who's very focused on their music when you're doing it, or are you able to stop?
Yeah, no, totally obsessed. Yeah. I get, yeah. A hobby is a time when I could just be playing drums. So why am I not just playing drums? And so what am I going to like, learn how to knit? No, I could be practicing drums. Like, yeah.
Obviously, War on Women are a hardcore punk band, and Black Lung are more, as you said, sort of on the psych rock side of things.
Mm-hmm.
You've spoken about those jam sessions and all the rest of it. Is it fair to say that you've got quite a sort of broad range of music that you listen to?
Yeah, absolutely. I like everything. I'm hard. I told Shauna this the other day too. My like hidden superpower is like, if you don't like a band, I will find the song that makes you like that band. There's something out there, man, that like I guarantee you're going to like it. That goes for anything, for country music, for the fucking dubstep. I don't care. Like anything, like there is something in that repertoire that you like. So I'm hard pressed to find something that I truly dislike. I do listen to everything.
Amazing. I think that comes across in sort of some of the picks and stuff that we're going to talk about in a moment. That there is quite a good range of stuff in there.
Yeah, it's a kind of random list, right?
Yeah. It's what I like. It's nice. So how did you find choosing the records? Was it so? There's lots of like favorite this, favorite that we're going to be talking about. Is it sort of a difficult task, or were you able? Some of them were you able to just sort of know the answer?
It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It's a crazy thing to ask someone to do. I thought about it all week, and then when I was like, I'm set. This is the best live album, and then I changed my mind 3 times after that. It's like, I found it really tough, but it was cool because it gave me a opportunity to go back and listen to a bunch of the stuff that I really love that I haven't picked up in a while. And re-dissect and be like, oh, I do still love this album.
I'm gonna take that audio clip of you saying it's the hardest thing we've ever done, and that's just going to be the email that I send to people when I ask them to come on the show now. So that's going to be fun.
Yeah, right.
So we'll crack on with those albums. So the first album from your list is your favorite debut album. Can you tell us what it is?
Yeah, I think I said Led Zeppelin 1, right? That's a pretty strong debut.
It's almost as if that is the actual correct answer to this question.
Right. How do you beat that? How do you beat that as a first album,
It's absolutely incredible. Interestingly, actually, some of the other picks you've got coming up are debut albums as well. But I mean, it's unbelievable. So, I mean, for anyone who's listening who hasn't heard this album, because there will be, some people, what makes it such a good album for you?
First off, like, just you got to put yourself in the like historical context of the album, right? Which is that it just came out and freaked everyone out because of how awesome it was, basically, right? It's like no one else sounded like that. Nobody else took those old blues songs and made them sound like that, and it's like it comes out swinging, and then it gets a little slow. You got You Shook Me Babe, and then it's like right into Dazed and Confused. which is like, one of the most legendary songs ever, arguably, right? And you're like, that's a debut. That's like track 3 or 4 or whatever. It's it's just killer. It's so monstrous, and I think there's something for everyone on this record. If you're a drummer, you got Bonham. If you're a bass player, you got John Paul. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like every musician stands on their own and speaks to everyone holding that instrument, I think. So like, I actually came to it later because as a drummer, like I love Bonham. Everybody loves Bonham, but like I didn't come to classic rock until later because I was so into jazz, hip hop, all that other stuff. Rock and roll kind of seemed like a guitarist and lead singer's medium to me, you know. And then only later was I was like, obviously, like, Bonham's killing on the record, right? But yeah, it made me wait. I didn't come to it till a little bit later in life.
Sort of how old roughly do you think you were when you sort of started?
When I really like loved it was like college, honestly. Probably when I was smoking like the most weed is like when I liked it. Is when I really liked it the most.
It's one of these things that, like you said, it is an incredible debut, and it's not even as if they then got worse from here.
Right.
The quality of the output maintained at such a high level, it's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Do you still listen to a lot of Zeppelin?
I do and I don't. What worries me about this answer is that it seems like cliche. It seems like such a cliche, obvious answer, but that's only because of how awesome it is and how great they continued to be. Like you're saying, like, yeah, if I do listen to Zeppelin, I think I'll put on like Presence or like I don't know, just like some of the later stuff where they really started like stretching out and getting weird and messing with odd time signatures and getting almost like jazz fusion world, you know. But yeah, I mean, none of it's bad. You're hard pressed to find a bad Zeppelin album, I think.
No, I completely agree. So, like, the recording of this album, it was, which is again kind of a great story in that it's completely self-financed. They went into the studio,
Right.
they did, I think it was like 30 hours of studio time to actually get this sort of laid down, which is absolutely incredible. How sort of is that experience of being in a studio, and how does that compare to sort of, for example, the experience you had recording the Black Lung debut? Was it 2014?
Yeah, 2014, 2015, something like that. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like Black Lung didn't even know we were a band until we recorded our debut album. Like our friend Noel and our other friend Phil had just started this record label called Grimoire Records, which is they've put out a ton of good stuff in 2022. Just check out Grimoire's discography. But they're mainly metal. It's a heavier record label than what Black Lung really is. But we were just like kind of got in on the ground floor, and they were experimenting with us. But we went to UMBC, which is this college in Maryland that our guitarist at the time was studying audio recording at. So he had access to their studio. And so we went in there, and I think we literally just used the space of the studio. We didn't use any of their gear. Noel, the guy who runs Grimoire, brought all of his own stuff. He brought a little laptop and brought some mics, and that was it. We recorded it in like 3 days, and only when we listened back were we like, oh, this is kind of good. We kind of like this, But yeah, very, very minimal, very underproduced, very raw, and yeah, that's the way to do it, man. I mean, just to conceptualize, like, Led Zeppelin, all the bands of that era, there was not a computer in the studio. Computers didn't exist. There was no Pro Tools. There was no DAW. There was no digital audio workshop, right? There were microphones and preamps and a mixer and tape. You recorded to tape. It was really expensive. It was really hard. You had to get it right the first time. You couldn't do like 30 takes of a guitar solo and pick the one you like. You just like had to be great, And so that just like speaks to their musicianship. Like they were good, like Jimmy Page was a studio musician before he was in Zeppelin, like he was a great, well-trained guitarist. And so like for all the rock and roll and for all the glam and everything, it's like, at the end of the day, they were just that good. They could get it in one.
Do you think then that change in recording process, so as you said, going from tape and no Pro Tools, any of that, to how stuff's recorded now, some albums can lose a little bit of that live energy.
I think the key is to approach the two things differently. You can do things live that you can't do in the studio, and you can do things in the studio that you can't do live. They're two different projects. It's not the same thing. So as long as you go in knowing that, then you're not going to worry about like, oh, maybe we'll lose the live energy, because of course you will. You're not in front of people. You're not going to sound the same that you do live. You just never will. That's an unachievable goal. I was concerned with that early on, but then that was like one of the first things to go for me. Like you're never going to sound like you're going to sound live. You obviously bring the energy on the record, and you don't want to like be slouching or anything, but it's different. It's just different. You should approach it differently, I think.
And was there sort of any other debuts you considered for this pick, or was it straight up it's Led Zeppelin?
Yeah, it was kind of it. Yeah, I mean, like one of the other albums I chose, like Mars Volta, it's like that. Like De Loused is like kind of a debut, but they had like that other thing before it that was like kind of a record, but it was like I don't know, like an EP or something. And then there was like all the At the Drive-In stuff. So it was like all this stuff kind of leading up to it. Whereas, I don't know, I feel like Zeppelin was just like, that's it. This is us. We're coming out strong. This is like our identity as a band forever. Hard to beat.
We'll jump onto that one then. We'll jump onto Mars Volta. So this was what you sent over as your sort of favorite album in general. Can you tell us again what it is and why you like it so much?
Yeah. De Loused in the Comatorium is the debut. I guess arguably the debut, right, for Mars Volta.
Yeah, I'd class it as that.
Yeah. Really the first true full length. And again, the drummer, John Theodore, from Baltimore guy, right? Because we make fucking awesome drummers. And this record is it's my favorite because it broke every single rule that I knew about drumming, and it was okay. It bent and broke every rule, and it did it so I don't know, gracefully, that like, those rules no longer existed after this album came out. It was just so crazy. It sounded like nothing we had ever heard before, and there were still songs in there, right? It's not just like crazy noises the whole time and like, spinning out of control. It does spin out of control, but then it comes back, and there's like catchy guitar riffs and like, catchy choruses, and like, it's there are solos. There's like everything that we like about rock and roll. But yeah, man, I don't know. I spent so much time with this album, like when I was, because this was also in my like obsessive drum years. So I was like, I learned every track, I learned every note, I learned everything to this album. I could probably play most of it back to this day just because it's so ingrained in my mind. Like John Theodore just like took it to a different place. It was kind of, there's like everything before that album and everything after that album in my mind.
So you're talking about sort of the rules that they broke on this record. There's lots of sort of traditional jazz and bluesy influences, I think, in the drumming on this record as well. Is that sort of part of the attraction, your background in sort of playing jazz stuff and playing blues stuff? Do you think that helped pull you in?
Yeah, definitely, man. I mean, you can hear his influence. You can hear John Theodore's like Latin, Afrobeat, Afro-Cuban jazz influence, man. He's putting like, these Afrobeat rhythms over top these crazy manic guitar riffs, and it just works for some reason. It's just this like indefinable quality, and then they keep doing it for the next however many albums. Like it just keeps working, even when Thomas Pridgen joins the band and he brings in all these gospel chops and all these like, new influences. He's still using that like John Theodore bass of like even just like not using the hi-hats as much, and using that like weird cymbal stack that he uses to get all those super syncopated, really aggressive beats. Like that's still in the band to this day, to their most recent record. So yeah, all those different influences are crucial. They all blend together.
It's impossible to have a conversation about Mars Volta without bringing out the Drive-In in, I think. Were you a fan? Are you a fan?
Yeah, I'm basically a fan of everything that Omar or Cedric has ever done. I think they're just fearless, which is what you got to be when you're making music like that. And yeah, At the Drive-In, another band that was breaking a lot of rules, and that was just like had this crazy energy and this crazy presence that you couldn't really put your finger on. Like you could kind of hear the influences and you could kind of hear like the hardcore stuff, but there was this other thing happening, you know. But yeah, once John Theodore joined the band and once they made De Last, that was kind of it for me. At the Drive-In is awesome, but then just like something shifted with Mars Volta, you know. Maybe it was mushrooms or acid. I don't know. Like that helps, you know.
The concept for the album is so people call it a concept album in that. So it's meant to be about a man who enters a week-long coma after overdosing on morphine and rat poison. That's a hell of a way to sell an album.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing, and I think it's Rick Rubin produced, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, man, and you got like John Frusciante playing guitar. You got Flea playing bass on some stuff. Like it's not going to be bad.
So you put this in as sort of your favorite album. If I asked you to pick sort of top 3, 4, 5, what else would sit in alongside this?
Yeah, that's hard, man. It's I mean, it's definitely going to be something from Tribe Called Quest, right? Which is somewhere else on the list. It's definitely going to be something from them. It's going to be it's hard. The album thing is a tough question because I oftentimes categorize things in terms of like artists or in terms of like musicians. So like I have favorite drummers, I have favorite guitarists, I have favorite, like bodies of work. And sometimes it doesn't always get we also, like I grew up in the age of like a video, so like albums, while they're so crucially important and I love albums, I have just as deep of a relationship with videos. I have like favorite videos from artists and stuff like that, live videos, live concerts, music videos, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, sorry, I'm ranting a bit. To answer your question, yeah, basically anything from Tribe Called Quest is definitely making the top 10. So there's going to be like some James Brown moments that are definitely in the top 10. Any kind of like, I don't know, I listen to like a lot of soul and, it's like this weird blend between soul, jazz, and hip hop that I'm all obsessed with, and neo soul, Otis Redding is going to be in there. Hendrix will be in there. And then like Band of Gypsies will also be in there. And then a lot of this stuff crosses like into the best live album versus we're just talking about favorite, favorite live album, favorite regular, like, the Otis Redding, Jimi Hendrix split from Live at Monterey. Like that is one of my favorite albums ever. I've probably played that album like 100 times. It's a live album, but it still is like special and stands up next to Mars Volta even.
Amazing. So you mentioned Tribe Called Quest, and this is obviously another one of your picks. So this was your most played album. Can you tell us a little bit about what it is and a bit about the album and sort of when you first came to it as well?
Yeah. I've always loved Tribe Called Quest because they pull from jazz records, like a lot of their samples and stuff are old jazz records, and a lot of their drum breaks are old jazz records as well, if not like old James Brown records and stuff. And they are heavily designed by Jay Dilla. And if anyone doesn't know who Jay Dilla is, like just go get to Googling, man, because like he's made some of the favorite things that you've ever heard, most likely. And he's such an architect and he's so brilliant. And there's something about Tribe that like, I don't know, it has this like mass appeal while still being so unique and, so singular. I, like in order to be a working musician, you have to be a bartender. So I'm a bartender also. And, there was this bar that I worked at for a long time. And at the end of the night, like to close, I would sort of play like very, I don't know, agreeable, easy music throughout the night, like throughout when people were eating dinner and stuff. And then like once the sun went down, I just started playing Tribe Called Quest like every night for a long time. And no one ever got mad. No one was ever like, what's this? Or, oh, this again? It's like, it's never like that. It's just like, this is so pleasing to the ear. Even huge like I had people who were coming in who were like big hip hop fans, and but more like modern hip hop fans, and maybe they had never heard of Tribe, and they were just like, "What is this?" You know, like if you've never heard it before and you hear it for the first time, you're just like, "I need to rethink hip hop. I need to rethink everything." You know, like Low End Theory, it's got so much, man. It's got like we've got the jazz and scenario and man, opening track, Excursions, Bugging Out, Butter. I mean, like, check the rhyme. It's got everything. It's got everything you want in an album. I could listen. I could listen to that album 1,000 times.
So when did you first hear this album? When did you start getting into Tribe, and were you listening to sort of other hip hop stuff around the same time, or was it still sort of a lot of jazz you were listening to?
Yeah, it was a lot of jazz, but it was probably the Roots who took me to Tribe. It was probably loving Questlove as a drummer, and then you know he can't talk for like 10 minutes without mentioning Dilla. I think like Dilla and Prince, like he will always. It's like all roads lead back to Dilla and Prince for Questlove. Um, and with his approach, like he as a drummer, I had never heard somebody be like, I just want to sound like a drum machine. That was his goal. He was like, I just want to sound like a drum machine. And I was like, why would you want to do that? That sounds boring. That sounds like, I don't know, not appealing to me, right? But the more you listen to him, and the more you listen to the Roots, and the more you listen to their influences, which are Tribe, which are Q-Tip, and and Dilla, it makes sense that he would just want to be like this groove master that can just like make people dance, create a scenario for an MC to rap, and to just like build this music around this genre. It just kind of makes sense. But yeah, that's what took me there. Like early Roots albums and just like listening to Questlove interviews and stuff. And yeah, it'll lead you straight to Tribe, straight to Dilla.
It's a very socially aware album, I think. Like lyrically,
Mm-hmm.
it's trying to hit topics like not just relationships and consumerism, but it's talking about like date rape and stuff on this album.
Yeah.
It's quite
Yeah.
heavy in places.
Mm-hmm.
Do you seek out artists who talk about social issues, or is there sort of a lot of artists you listen to who are talking about what is going on in the world, or is it sort of just a happy accident when you find one?
Yeah, I think it's a nice bonus, because like I would have listened to, he could have been rapping, Q-Tip could have been rapping about anything, or Phife Dawg on this album, and it would have been great. It's a really nice bonus that they are so politically aware, and even their most recent album that they dropped was super political, and it's great. It lines up with the music. It doesn't take away from the music. It only enhances it and makes it better. And that's always the real test. It's like, am I being taken out of the experience of the music by these heavily political lyrics, or is it only enhancing the experience? And yeah, they're masters of it. It only ever makes it all better.
What role do you think political bands have in sort of trying to sort of change society and put their message across as a vehicle? Where do you think that they do and should fit in? Maybe.
I think everything starts with awareness, right? Like you can't solve a problem unless people know that the problem exists. So for bands that have the platform, for bands that have a platform where people actually listen to what they say and they have the ability to be articulate about it, it is your responsibility. It's your responsibility to say something, and to, especially now, man, like people will hold you accountable if you don't say something, right? But beyond like accountability and responsibility, it's just nice for like, if Warren Women plays a show and Shauna gets up on stage and one of the first things she says or yells into the microphone is like trans rights or human rights, like it's going to make people feel good. It's probably going to make some people not feel good, and fuck them if it does. But like if it's going to be some people in the crowd who like all they need in their life was just to hear somebody up on a stage and normalize something like that, just to be like trans rights or human rights, So it's not about responsibility. It's not about accountability. It's just about like making someone feel good, making somebody feel heard, making somebody feel powerful, making somebody feel like they don't have to like hide, right? And like, we're not the first political band. Like there's been political bands all throughout music. As long as music has existed, there's been political lyrics, right? So like, I don't know how the optimist in me says that, like, yes, it's a crucial part of solving problems and like putting policy in place and like, changing politics and changing the atmosphere in society. The pessimist in me says that like shit is still fucked, and no matter what we do, it's always going to be fucked. So I think there's a balance to be had in there, hopefully. It doesn't hurt.
I guess even if you take that second idea, you go, oh fuck, everything's fucked, and you still want to sort of be able to say your piece. And I think that's something that the new War on Women album does really well. Actually, it is laying out, and I'm assuming the time you wrote it was early this year.
Yeah, right. I mean, we were lucky right before COVID, so we were able to be in the studio together and not be too scared. It was right around February.
And I think it pulls out that the world is fucked and we're all doomed, but it's also at the same time not a negative sort of so we'll give up. It's actually quite like a rallying cry to action behind it. And I think that's a really positive thing on the album as well.
Yeah, it's got to be. I mean, that has to be it. It's all about coming together. The last thing that we would ever want to do is be like more divisive in this incredibly divisive time that we live in. So it is very much about coming together and, being vocal and doing your part. And, you can't just sit on the couch, right? Like, you got to do something. There's always something you can do. I mean, that's like an important theme of the band, I think, is like there is something that you can do, even if you don't have a dollar to your name, even if you're, I don't know, you could have everything going against you in the world. There is something that you can do to change the problems that affect you the most, or affect your friends, or affect your family.
I'm going to move us on to our next album. So it's the best live album. Can you tell us what you've gone for?
Yeah, this was the hardest one. This was the one I struggled with the most. This was the one that I went back and forth 100 times. But yeah, I landed on Erykah Badu's live album, which is it's Baduism live, basically. I've seen it as just like Erykah Badu live, and then I've seen it called Baduism live as well. But it's like the 1996 live album, and I think it's such a perfect album. I think top to bottom it is perfect. And it's singular, and nobody sounds like Erykah Badu. As hard as they try and as much as they want to, nobody sounds like Erykah Badu. Again, great drummer on the album, Pooji Bell. Here's the real magic. The first thing, anyway, that caught my ear on this album is every single bass drum note lines up with every single bass guitar note on the whole fucking album. It is so hard. It is the hard. I mean, like, to link up with a bass player, like that's a drummer's job anyway, right? Like that's the thing that we do, right? Like we got to be in the pocket, but to do it for the whole album, for every note of every part of every song, like, verse, bridge, and chorus, like it's a tour de force of like pocket playing. He like never plays a fill. It's crazy. Like, he does it sometimes, but it's like, it's so rare that it happens. And when you realize that is the thing, the driving force for Erykah Badu to like be able to do her thing so flawlessly, it's just this really impressive thing that's happening in the background the whole time. But yeah, besides that, it's Erykah Badu, man. She's the queen of neo soul.
With a live album, I guess what you're trying to do is you're trying to recreate actually being in that room and being in that environment, and I think it does it really well.
I agree. Yeah, you feel like you're there. You feel like you're in a little club, like just watching her. You feel like however they mic'd up the audience for that show, it's perfect. You feel like you are sitting beside a bunch of people, and all those big moments that when she really like goes forward and hits those big high notes, or if there's like a killer solo or like whatever's happening, when people applaud for it, you really do. I don't know what you're right. Whatever it is about it, it's like you feel like you're right there.
So do you listen to like a lot of live albums then?
Yeah, I do. I try to. I think you'll always find some. I'm always interested in like live arrangements. What did they do to change the song a little bit to make it more exciting live? Did they stretch out that one bridge to make it a little longer? Did they throw in a guitar solo? Did they like, and Erykah Badu, she's like the queen of that. She rearranges all of her songs. I was lucky enough to see her live before pre-COVID at this venue in DC called the Anthem, and it was unbelievable. Like every song had all that. She's playing stuff from Baduism, and she's playing stuff from her most recent albums, and they all feel as full of energy as they felt 10, 20 years ago. It's because they can liven up the arrangements and, just do something a little different.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really interesting with live albums. For an artist who's been going for a long time and there's lots of opportunities to hear sort of their live recordings as they go. I think David Bowie's a perfect example of this. You can listen to a live Bowie album from sort of 72, and then there's live albums all the way through his whole career. And you can see how he just changes the way some of the songs are played and the way that he's singing them and the inflection he puts on them and stuff. I think it's a really interesting way to follow an artist's career as well, actually.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. And you feel like, depending on the artist, like, the type of the room that they're playing in, right? Like the capacity of the room. Like Baduism, that live album, it really does feel like a small club or something, whereas like Bowie, he might be playing like a stadium or something, and you feel the energy of that stadium, and that's a whole different vibe. You might have a completely different approach for your songs, right?
Definitely. So obviously it's been like 8 months since anyone's been able to actually play any sort of real in-person gigs. How do you think this is going to change the live music industry? Like, as a musician coming at it, do you think the industry as a whole might take away from this sort of what will probably end up being about a year-long period?
Yeah, I know I could say this for sure. Like, one of my good friends is the booking agent for a couple clubs around town here. One of them is a 300 capacity club, and the other one is like 1,000 capacity club, right? So like he gets like fairly major acts to come through, and he was telling me that like pre-COVID, it's so competitive, the booking agency industry, because like especially in Baltimore, like we're a weird market because we're right next to DC. So if you're playing like 1,000 capacity room, you might just go to DC. You might not come through Baltimore, right? So like we need to offer, because around here, it's like we're called like the DMV, the DC, Maryland, Virginia area.
Okay.
We're all pretty close, and then you're not far from Pennsylvania, you're not far from Philly, you're 3 hours away from New York, like everything is very close, so it's highly competitive all the time. And so the one thing that he's told me is that all of the booking agents from like the East Coast in particular, they have to talk to each other now, whereas before they didn't. It was just kind of like fend for yourself, we'll see who gets who's going to offer the best deal, whatever. But he was like, I've been on Zoom calls with like all these guys recently, and it's like we have to work together if we're going to recreate the music scene, if we're going to recreate the ecosystem that was happening before. Like, I don't think people realize, man, like when I say ecosystem, like I mean it. Like touring bands, like I think people think about like venues, like these places that are just there for them, like when they want to go see a show, like that a band that they like is scheduled for, they're like, I'm going to go to that venue, and then maybe I won't go there again for like a year, until another band. Like that's a large part of like the music goer experience. Obviously there's like people who go to shows all the time, and there's like the very strong network that like metal fans are like the best, right? Like punk fans are the best, like they're so loyal, and they are so happy to go spend $10 or $20 or whatever it is to go support their bands. But like largely, man, if you think about somebody who goes to like a Coldplay concert, like they might not go to another concert for like 6 to 12 months. Like that might just be like the one thing that they do if they're not just like seeing a band at a restaurant or a bar or something, right? So like, there is this ecosystem that is like, there are thousands of bands on tour at any given moment around this world, right? And they're going everywhere, right? It's international, and they're going in between states and in between countries, and it's every single day, right? Every single day there is music at a venue somewhere, and thousands of venues, right? So you think about this crazy like weaving organism that is like bands being on tour, and then we just kind of like rip that out of society, like amongst other things as well. Obviously, this is like, but like it's going to be really difficult to recreate that thing in the way that it was existing before. I think we could do it. I think we can get there, but like it's going to take time for everybody to feel comfortable doing it again. Like to be on tour is to live like the dirtiest lifestyle possible, right? It's like the least COVID friendly thing you can do. Like Brooks likes to, our guitarist, like, he tells this story is like, because we're always talking about like, what's the weirdest place you've ever slept or whatever. Brooks literally slept on dog food one night. Like they just set up like these like 4 big bags of dog food, and he slept on it because that was the most comfortable thing in the house. Like, it couldn't be a less COVID friendly experience being on tour, right? You're around strangers all the time. You're in very close quarters. We're in a van for like 8 hours a day, like, spitting our droplets all over everybody. Like, it's going to be tough, man. It's going to be tough to bounce back. Again, it's like an optimist pessimist thing. Like, the optimist in me is like, people are going to be so starved for live music, they're going to come out every night, and there's going to be this massive wave of support and everything. And the pessimist in me is like, you didn't go to see your friend's band before, so are you going to do it now? Probably not. You're just going to fucking stay. You're going to be like, I don't know, let's stay home. Is it $10? That's a big cover. Maybe not. We'll see.
I guess even if there is a move towards, everyone wants to go out all the time, there's actually got to be the venues surviving to make that work. I know in the UK we've
Right.
got, we're at risk of losing so many venues at the minute, and it's the small little DIY venues that you see, sort of like your favorite little touring band. It's not.
Yep. No, the big ones will be okay. Yeah, the big ones will be okay. It's the small ones for sure. Yeah, one of the things that made me that really hit home for me in the early COVID days, because one of the other tours that got canceled was a Black Lung tour. We were going to go to Europe, and our European booking agent was like, not only was he like, okay, we definitely can't book this tour, but he was like, even if I wanted to book it for 2021, I don't know if the venues are going to be there anymore.
Yeah.
So like, I can book you a show at this venue, but it might go out of business by the time you're supposed to play there. And that was like, fuck. That was like, I was like, okay, this is going to be real bad for a real long time, and you can support your venues, man. Like, you can go on. I know, like, there's lots of venues around Baltimore that are doing GoFundMes and all that kind of stuff. They shouldn't have to. It should come from the government. But like, there is a way for you to support, for you to help out in the meantime, if you ever want to go see music there again,
Yeah, definitely. And in the show notes for this episode, there'll be links for the UK and American campaigns as well for GoFundMe's.
That's awesome.
So I'll put those in.
Yeah.
So the last record I wanted to talk to you about today is your album of 2020. I know as we sit here, we're about 4 weeks away from the end of the year, which means there's potentially thousands of releases still to come. But but we'll put this one in tentatively, I guess, at this point. But what have you gone for?
Yeah, I chose an album that came out just last week. It's called KG by King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. It's fucking awesome. It's so good. It's the second in their microtonal series. So the first one was that Flying Microtonal Banana, I think is what it's called, and it's like the album with like Rattlesnake on it, and like so like microtonal, for anyone who doesn't know, it's like the notes in between the notes. Like, most conventional instruments are like half steps, right? So we go like C, C sharp, D, D sharp, etc. This is like in the middle of C and C sharp. There's some more notes in there, so you could have like a quarter step guitar, and that's what they're messing with in this microtonal series. So it's heavily like Eastern influence. Like, you hear a lot of like sitar melodies and things like that, a lot of drone notes. I just think it crushes everything that came out this year. I think it's the album of the year, and I think Minimum Brain Size is the song of the year. I think that song is such a jam and reminds me of so many things all at the same time.
It's a really interesting album, and and King Gizzard really interests me. They sort of fascinate me as a band. Like, you never quite know what you're going to get from album to album. Like, this is the, I think, 16th studio album over 10 years. Like, it's absolutely amazing. And
they had one run in 2017 where they released like 5 albums.
Yeah.
In 1 year, right? I mean, it's like, and the Microtonal Banana was the first one of those 5 albums.
Yes, it was their 9th one, wasn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
If you were coming to King Gizzard, or if you were telling someone to come to this band for the first time, where would you even recommend that they start? Because it's quite a sort of dense.
Yeah, it's a journey. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it depends on who's. So like when Brooks first came, for example, the guitarist in War on Women, when I was first showing him King Gizzard, he had never heard of them before. I showed him Infest the Rat's Nest, right? Because that's like their heavy album. That's their like kind of hardcore, shreddy, really fucking rock and roll album. But you know, if it was one of my like jazzier heads, I might point them towards like what is it, Polygon Wonderland, or that Fishing for Fishies. You know, that's like kind of more like an Allman Brothers kind of vibe sometimes. And yeah, man, there's so much. It's so dense, like, you know, to go through all their stuff. I might just play somebody Rattlesnake and be like, do you like this or not? Because like here's like a 7.5 minute song. They're kind of just doing the same thing the whole time, but it's awesome for some reason. For drummers, you know, there's 2 drummers in the band. So that's cool. Get to watch them interact. What are they doing? Why is there 2 drummers? It's not always necessary. Sometimes they're playing just the same thing. So it's just cool to like hear, like from a production standpoint, like if you're a big studio head, they're super lo-fi, right? Like Brooks's his instinct, which I had never thought of, but is pretty apt description. He was like, the drums sound like shit, so the guitars sound awesome. You know, and I was like, that's true. That is definitely happening. Like, you know, it's almost like they don't even try to like record the drums well. You know, the snare is all blown out. Like anytime he does like any kind of fill with like a 16th note, you know, it's instantly just like it sounds crazy. But the guitars for that reason sound so shreddy and so killer. So yeah, I don't know. They get this real interesting sound in the studio. Yeah, there's a lot to go through. I would take your time.
Yeah, they're by far one of the most interesting bands around. Like you can sort of get lost in what they're doing quite easily as well. And it's
like it feels like gimmicky, the fact that they have 16 albums, right? But it's like it's not a gimmick. Like they're all good. You know, it's like each one is just as good as the last, if not better. Like you know, like to have like 14 albums and then to put out Infest the Rat's Nest, and for that to be like you know, some people like that's the best one. It's like, okay, here comes another one, and I think KG is the best album of this year. It's pretty amazing if you can just get past the fact that like, okay, this band puts out a lot of albums. It's like they put out a lot of good albums. I think that's the most important part, right? It's not just this weird like, let's see how much we can do game.
So how have you found 2020 for music in general?
It's weird. You know, I get excited for the new releases, but I have been going back and listening to a lot of old stuff as well. I just, you know, it's been a good year for listening and consuming music. I think it's hard to stay inspired, man. Like in the early quarantine days, you know, I fucking sat down at my computer and I made a new Black Lung album, basically. You know, I just like I had worked on these old ideas, some new ideas, you know, just finish things. I was just finishing things. But like I did find that after I finished everything, I was not super encouraged to like keep writing, you know? Like and it's not like there's nothing to write about. I mean, we're living in a crazy time. It's just hard to I don't know. I'm somebody who is like very much energized by people, by being around other humans, like, you know, maybe that comes from being a musician for all these years. Maybe it comes from being a bartender for all these years, but like, you know, I need to be around people in order to, you know, feel like inspired to do this stuff. So like, I don't know. For me, I've just been spending a lot of time in the practice space playing drums, trying to like keep my chops up and all that kind of stuff. But it's been, it's been an interesting year to see if you can still stay inspired or not, if you can still feel like prolific or not. Like, you know, King Gizzard only put out 1 album this year, right?
Was there sort of anything else that came out sort of that you just want to sort of throw in stuff that you know, if KG hadn't been released, you would have been going, yeah, that's probably near the top of the list?
I don't know, man. I mean, that one just like of all the stuff that came out this year. I mean, there's been like a lot of singles that came out this year too, which is cool. Like I think Tune Yards put out this like killer song that was that I really loved. But yeah, there's not been anything like I think I've listened to that song Minimum Brain Size like 20 times already, and you know it's only been out for like a week, and there's not been anything that's really struck me like that this year. That I don't know. It just really caught my ear in all the right ways. I had a bunch of other live albums that I was listening to that I couldn't decide on. Like I went to Stop Making Sense, Talking Heads live album.
Okay.
I was like, I feel like that had to be on the list. How the West Was Won, the live Zeppelin album. I feel like that had to be on there. And the one that James Brown live at the Apollo, I think like that's a fucking unbelievable, again, like historical context, you know, like that was not the thing that you were supposed to do at that time, and he did it, and it became like one of the greatest things ever, right? And then the one that I almost chose, almost for the best live album, was Lauryn Hill Unplugged. Have you ever
Okay.
listened to that album?
No.
It's fucking crazy. It's such a polarizing album, right?
Hmm.
Because she's famous from the Fugees at this point, right? I think it's in the 90s, and she's like known, and she has these like new songs that she's just like, okay, I'll just like test these out on MTV, basically,
Right.
and it's just her and a guitar. It's just her and an acoustic guitar, and it's just a marathon of singing and of lyrics. It's a polarizing album because some people are like, she's just playing three chords the whole time. Like she's playing like for the whole album, she's just playing like the same three chords over and over again. Each song kind of has the same vibe and the same, I don't know, like general feeling.
Yeah.
But then there's all the other people who are like, this is like the greatest shit of all time. Like it's so pure, it's so raw, it's so just like stream of consciousness, stream of thought, stream of creativity. Like every word out of her mouth is perfect. She has a kind of sore throat, so she's like singing with a raspy voice. It still sounds amazing. She's rapping. She's like, she like never stops singing. I mean, it's like an hour long, and she like never takes a break. Because there's no other musicians. She's not, and it's not like she's like this virtuosic guitarist or anything, it's just her and an acoustic guitar, and she just never, I don't know. It's great. I could talk about that album forever because so many people hate it and so many people love it. It's just always just like, I just go back to it every now and again, and I'm just like, God damn, like what a beast. But yeah, then I landed on Baduizm, but that was like a very, very close runner up. That had to be mentioned.
I'll check it out, and I'll send you an email and let you know whether I fall on the love or hate side of it.
Yeah, I would be curious to know. Yeah. I'll send you. I can't remember I think it's The Mystery of Iniquity.
Okay.
That's like that's the one. That's the one you got to listen to. That's the one that got sampled by Drake, and like it's famous now. But yeah, man, give it a listen. I'm curious to know what you think.
I'll check it out. I think that's all the records we had, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, amazing, Dave. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed listening to your picks as well. Where can people find you? Where can people find your music? What have you got coming up in 2021?
Yeah, man. Yeah, thanks for having me. Again, this was really fun. This is like my ideal podcast. I could just like rant and talk about like music and albums forever. But yeah, man, people can find me personally on Instagram. It's Be More Cavalier. So it's like the letter B, More Cavalier, Cavalier. Yeah, if you just want to see like drum videos or me hanging out, that's the place to find that. And yeah, please follow War on Women on all social media stuff. Black Lung, again, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. We're everywhere. Yeah, the new War on Women album is out. So if you would like a vinyl for somebody for Christmas, now's the time. Yeah, you can go to like Bridge 9, our record label, and we've got all kinds of cool designs for our vinyl.
So that was my chat with Dave. As you would have heard right at the end there, Dave was telling you to go and buy the War on Women vinyl for Christmas. Even though Christmas has now passed, you should go and buy it anyway, to be perfectly honest. You can either buy it for yourself or buy it for someone. Just, Valentine's Day is coming up. There's birthdays, and, it's never too early to start buying for Christmas 2021. So I'm really grateful for Dave for coming on. He was a really, really nice guest. It was actually the first episode I recorded, and he made everything really easy, and he was super friendly. So I'm extremely grateful for him for that. You should go and follow him on all social media because he's just a really lovely guy. It's now the end of the podcast, so it's that fun point where I ask you to go away and rate the podcast on Apple iTunes, and if you can subscribe to us, and if you can tell your friends about us, and if you can post about us on social media and do all of that fun stuff. If you do post about the show and tag us in, I'll send you a message and I'll try and get some stuff to you in the post. Something fun, don't know what yet, could be anything. Yeah, probably just be a picture of my cat, to be honest, but that's very nice anyway. You can find me on Instagram at vinyl__tap, or you can find the podcast on Facebook by searching It's a Record Time Podcast, as well as on Twitter at It's Record Time. You can also contact me on It's a Record Time Podcast at gmail.com with anything else you want to sort of send me. So thanks again for listening, guys. I'll be back again next week. Bye.